Got one eyeball in here. Two eyeballs in here. Alrighty. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Sue. It wouldn't let you in. What happened, Sue? Why not? Hold on a second here. I don't know. Music kept playing. What time? What time? We got started a little bit late. We got started a little bit late. I think we started at like 10 after. Hold on here. I don't see you in the waiting room. Yes. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, bye. Goodbye. Yeah, the live is where it's at. We have a lot of fun with that. We really do. And it was very spirited last night. It was I don't know what happened, how it happened, but we had like 300 people, at 340 people at the height, and it was that's the most I think I've ever done. So it was exciting, and it was a good. We had some good stuff to talk about last night. So, hmm. Let's see. So it looks like we got 10 people in here watching now. This is good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're obviously we start a little bit early, and the weather could be. You know what? I'm gonna actually verify with Doug. Give me a second here, just because Southern California is having a really we're having a really bad storm, a lot of water, and as you most of you who aren't in Southern California don't know that when it rains in California, it may as well be snow because people just don't know how to drive. Where in New York are you, Maria? A new answer. It might be. It might be Sue. Okay. So, how do you like Long Island? I mean, is it as liberal as everybody says it is? I mean, there's got to be some conservatives out there. It depends on the weather patterns. So a lot of times people think that the weather comes in from the um, due comes in like due west or due east from the ocean, but a lot of time it depends on where the storm's coming from. Generally, the storm is either actually coming from the north, so it will come down kind of if this is the coast, it'll come down and it'll kind of come down like from the north. But then there's also times when it comes in from the south. All depends. All depends on where it's coming from. Really? That's interesting, Maria. Mostly Republican. Hmm. That's surprising. Of course. Same thing. I know I'm about 80 miles due east of downtown LA. And LA itself is there is the war hamster. Let's add him. LA is very LA. You'd be surprised though. I mean, LA is a liberal city, but there are still pockets of conservatives in Los Angeles. So LA is not the liberal bastion. It is in terms of the elections, and it is in terms of concentration of people. But I'm surprised to see you say that um, Long Island is mostly Republican.
I've heard that somewhere before too.
I'd never heard that ever. I thought Long Island was like
Well,
the rich liberal class, on Long Island.
isn't Long Island's just gigantic though? I
Hmm.
mean, it's got a whole bunch of different pockets.
It is. I tried to get a hold of Doug. Were you able? Have you had any contact with him today?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that he was going to be on time because I know the rain the rain in Southern California is
Well, it hasn't hit. It hasn't hit. Well, I spoke too soon. That first drop's just hit. They
yeah.
got. I'm sitting there looking at the. I can see the clouds forming over the sea coming towards us.
Hmm.
It's gonna be a pretty good rain.
Oh, it's already been raining here. It's been pouring here for a couple hours.
Yeah, that first set of clouds barely even. There's two kinds of rains. So the kind that gets your car clean, the kind that gets your car dirty. We got we had the rain that got it dirty this morning, so I don't really
Mm.
count that.
Well, I think that's generally the first rain.
Yeah, this storm is it's all these clouds are dark and ominous. We're already in the winds picking up.
Well, it's a winter storm, so it's coming in from the north. I'm going to text him and see if he responds. Um,
That's the other thing about Doug is he's. I would say he's not the very best at returning texts promptly. And
No, I know, but I mean, I tried to call him and it got his voicemail. So. So we've got 13 live. It's not like it was last night in the glitch. That was by the way, did you get your did you get the link?
the upload now, Alpha never sent it. You want to send him? You want to send him a reminder?
Yeah.
Hey, Chris. It's hot as hell in South Texas today. I'm jealous. Also surprised that the convoy that's leaving from L.A. I'm surprised they didn't route that further south.
There he is. There he is. Why are you shaking your head?
Because I was excited today that nobody wanted to take me out to lunch, so I'd be here early so I could make sure I working. I get on and everything works.
I just got a text that Queen Elizabeth has passed away.
So has Don Dix.
Who is Don
Don Dix passed away this morning. You know who Don Dix is, right, Ron?
No.
Chairman of the GOP Republican Party, used to run Act for America out of Corona.
No,
Unite IE chairman.
I don't know if I ever meet him. I don't know. I may have.
Through me, you may have. Anyway, he's a mover and a shaker and some things, and he passed away this morning. What's it called? Colitis. But anyway, he's a very important cog in the machine. So he also has a show on 590, or did. He used to fill in for the morning show, and he and Jennifer, what's her name, used to do an afternoon show at 6 o'clock on 590 a.m. Every Monday through Friday also. But in Riverside County, he's a big deal. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
It's a big loss to our cause and to this world. I mean, because he's such a good guy, but yeah.
Well, I'll just have to take your word for it.
Yeah, but so I get here early because that way, if my background's not working or my mic's not working or the earphones, which hasn't worked the last couple times, aren't working, we can spend the time working on it. I do what I always do, exact same thing, bring on, it all works. It only doesn't work when it's going to tick me off.
So you're ticked off that it's working.
Well, see, I'm not ticked off because I had plenty of time. I was prepared for it. It waits until I'm not prepared, then it doesn't work. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all.
Well, you speak that into existence. I'm not that way.
I don't speak it into existence. Trust me, I can't control the stoplights. And I swear, I go down the road and it's like they turn red as I'm approaching. I get my wife in my car and it's like the parting of the Red Sea. They just all turn green. It's like you can almost hear the angels as we're going down the freeway or the roadway with my wife in the car because she has the best luck. And usually her good luck cancels out my bad luck. Oh, don't poor Doug me. I'm not a poor Doug. It just sucks. Thank you, Sue.
Doug definitely seeks pity.
No, I don't seek pity. I don't give a crap. It just sucks. It just makes my work harder is all. That's all.
Do you want to you're early. We're 5 minutes early, but do you want to go ahead and start jumping in?
If you want me to leave, maybe unplug my mic and stuff so we can go to the usual.
I didn't say that. I know we're early, but people can, if they come in live, they can always go back.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I love about this show, though,
Hmm.
as opposed to some other things that I listen to, is the chit chat's very short. We get to the point really fast.
Yeah. Good.
I want you to think
Hey,
about it now. Think about it. What did
well,
I
hey,
just listen to recently that where there was a lot of chit chat, took a long time to get started? Has these
oh,
four guys on it. Hang on a second.
Oh, whatever.
Hey, Doug, I came up with it. Doug's not going to be at class on Thursday, so I am going to lead the class in his absence. And I've figured out my topics today. You want to hear them?
Okay.
I'm going to do the original Great Awakening. I'm going to talk a little bit about Brian. What's his last name, Ron? Brian McCaffrey.
McClanahan.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about his episode on Yankees, and then I'm going to do a big thing on the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum. That should be about an hour's worth, and I will be posting that on my channel to everybody in the chat.
Yeah, because I have a 6:30 thing on Thursday. I'm going to be speaking to a group called the Creation Fellowship out of Santee. And my presentation is titled The Necessity of a Godly Foundation. But that starts at 6:30. So being in Carlsbad at 6 and finishing at 7 and somehow starting something at 6:30 wasn't going to happen. And I had forgotten about it until, fortunately, I didn't wait until Wednesday night to remember, but I had forgotten about it until this weekend. I'm like, oh man, Thursday, what am I going to do? And fortunately, I have Brady in my world. So thank you, Brady.
Oh God.
Oh, that's right. War hamster, whatever. Stop laughing.
It's not like it's sitting there on the screen right in front of you. It says war _hamster. Hey, Ron, you want to go ahead and post your poll?
Yeah.
Chat? I think we got like 25% new people last week. How'd you like the rest of the how'd you like the show once we got to the content, Doug?
I was asleep by then. No, I'm kidding. No, it's pretty good stuff. I actually listened to it while I was driving because I never have any time at home. But it was pretty good. But I want to get back to Brian McClanahan. So War Hamster, that's spelled Brady, sends me this text with this link, and it says the best 25 minutes you'll spend, or something like that. And I'm like, all right, this better be good. He's he has hyped it up. It better be something where it's not just good. I'm learning something.
And I don't normally hype things up, so
yeah, it did not fail. It definitely lived up to the hype. So
maybe I'll put that link. Should I put the link in here for the chat here?
Yeah, shoot it in there.
Yeah, I'll do that for you guys.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. It ties into a lot of what I already say and talk about, but not in the way I talk about it. It really puts it into a capsule that is very understandable and really ties the Puritan way of thinking to a lot of what's going on today in ways that, while I kind of talk about it, it's definitely, and like I said, I even learned something because I tell people what's going on now has been there all along, and it's been that kind of thinking. But to tie it directly the way he did, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I've become a fan of Brian McClanahan, and it's your guys' fault.
I think he's fantastic.
Yeah,
that was a good find.
Did I found him.
No, that was me. I get credit on this one.
No. I found him because he's the one who did the Constitution. He's the one who did the comparison of the Constitution with the with the Confederate Constitution.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that to me originally.
You're right. That was you, Mr. Partain. You get full credit.
All right, top of the hour, 1 minute after, matter of fact. So we're actually a minute late at this point. So
War Hamster has given me a tremendous amount of amazing content to watch, but every once in a while I need to get a little credit for finding something.
There you go. Now, I want to apologize ahead of time if something happens because I'm doing something I don't typically do. I'm letting my doggies stay in my office. Usually they're good, but if there's barking, I'm warning you. Okay. So, boys, you be good. Well, they just, nobody's in the house. They're by themselves.
It's raining.
I felt bad. Yeah, they're my boys. Huh, boys? Yeah, good boy. Okay. So where we left off is we actually finished with Article 1, Section 8. And we are ready to roll on Article 1, Section 9.
Yes, sir.
And so for those of you who have your handy-dandy pocket constitutions, if you have one that looks like mine, all right, that's page 7, bottom of page 7. The rest of you, Article 1, Section 9. Article 1, Section 9. And if you don't have a printed constitution, go to douglasvgibbs.com/library, douglasvgibbs.com/library. Find the box that says historical documents. Click that, and there'll be a link for a constitution. Come up on your screen, you'll have it. Okay, so Article 1, Section 9. Now, real quick, I want to do a few overview things just so that, number one, for the continuity here, and number two, for those who are new, kind of give you an idea of where we're at. And for those of you who have not been on this broadcast before, welcome. Good to have you. If you are watching this later, good to have you. When it's live, there is a chat room you can participate in. And I see it. Ron sees it. The War Hamster. Or actually, that's Gangster Rap. Oh, Hamster Rap, I mean. Yeah. See, but the hamster is wearing colors. You notice that? He's got his colors going. But anyway, we're all participating also in the chat room. I don't type in there, but I am paying attention. The other two do have their hands on the keyboards and ready to roll. So if you want to participate live, Tuesdays, 3 o'clock Pacific, for those of you who are watching this later as a YouTube video. Great to have you. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs. I'm known online as Mr. Constitution, that Constitution guy, and Mr. Pistachio because of the politicalpistachio.com blog site that I have, douglasvgibbs.com. Otherwise, and let's get rolling. So Article 1, Section 9. Article 1, remember, we have 7 articles of the original Constitution. The first 3 articles are the 3 branches of government. Article 1, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. We're still in the legislative branch. So this is all about the legislative branch, Congress. So Article 1, Section 9, the migration. Let's stop right there. The word migration. The word migration is movement of people. Now, here, the word migration is that my doggies? Stop.
Yes.
But anyway, the migration of people, there's 2 pieces of migration here they're talking about. One is the migration of persons who are to be used in slavery over the land, and also immigration. So migration is really referring to both here, okay? So
Douglas,
the migration.
Doug, let me tell you for just 1 second. I just want to update everybody. If you go into if you don't have a constitution and you want to follow along, if you go into the description, I just updated the description to reflect the historical document, so you can find the Constitution there. So with that being said, go back to you, Doug.
All right, very good. All right, so migration. Then it says the migration, once again, Article 1, Section 9, the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit. Importation. So the word importation, that comes from import. You import products, so it's persons that are being imported. Well, what persons were being products at the time and being imported? Slaves. So we're talking about the movement of slaves either by land or by sea, and also immigration by land. It says the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808. So what it's saying is before January 1st, 1808, that's all up to the states. It's a state issue. It's none of Congress's business. But Once that year happens, once 1808 is reached, Congress will have the authority to write legislation to prohibit those things. So what it was is an opportunity for them to outlaw the Atlantic slave trade. This is what it's really all about. So for those of you who are convinced this is a racist document, that's a very unracist thing. If you think slavery is all about racism, which it wasn't either, but that's a different discussion. This kind of kills that idea, doesn't it? So as of January 1st, 1808, Congress has the authority. They don't have to. It's given them the authority that the importation may not be prohibited by Congress prior to that year. Then it says something a little bit more, and I'll get back into that first language in a moment, but I want to get the next part real quick. But a tax or duty, a duty is like an import tax, may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. So before, when slaves were coming in, there was no federal tax. Now they're adding a federal tax. Now, someone who doesn't understand what was trying to be done there, they say, oh, well, wow, they're trying to make money on slavery now. That would be the first thought. No. As a free market guy who believes in a dynamic economic system, war hamster, what happens when you start taxing something typically in a free market dynamic economic system?
You usually get less of it.
You usually get less of that activity. When you start taxing something, you get less of that activity. They knew that. You start taxing the slaves coming in, what's going to happen? That's going to reduce the activity immediately. So they're giving them a little over 20 years before they impose
a tax or a duty, a potential tax or a
20
duty.
years before they're going to impose this prohibition. In other words, saying you just can't do it anymore. But until then, they're going to tax it. So that at least reduces the activity until they get rid of it. Understand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and people see, now if you think everything has a racist connotation, obviously you're not going to notice that. You're going to think the other.
Mm-hmm.
So clear your mind. Take a deep breath. No more racism in the brain, so that we can look at it from a more proper point of view, from the Founding Fathers' point of view. So, okay, so Founding Fathers are basically saying this. We're creating this Constitution. The federal government, the Constitution really only applies to the authorities granted to the federal government, essentially. So, external. So, while there are people in our delegation who wants us to use the Constitution to outlaw slavery, and in fact, 3 of those people refused to sign the Constitution on September 17, 1787, because it didn't outlaw slavery. One of those people being George Mason. The idea was we can't outlaw slavery with the Constitution because that's a state issue. Once slaves are inside a state, it's up to the states. They have to make that decision. We don't want to use the Constitution or the federal government just to outlaw slavery in the states. They have to come to that decision for themselves. That's like the federal government trying to, force you to quit smoking. You need to make that decision for yourself. They might push you in a certain direction with taxation, but you need to come to that decision yourself, okay? So we have a federal Constitution here saying we are going to tax this activity as they're coming in, because we can do that. That's an external activity that the federal government can do. Once they're in the state, though, that's up to the states to get rid of slavery. But what we are going to do, rather than outlaw slavery, is that when 1808 comes, Congress has the authority to at least outlaw the external part of the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade, which makes slavery now completely internal. You're going to replace your slaves, it better be through birth, reproduction, because we're not letting any more in.
Doug, does that make the 13th Amendment unconstitutional because they did it?
No, because it's an amendment. Now, if they'd have done it legislatively, it would have been unconstitutional.
But it's because the states ratified it. It gets
right. So remember, an amendment changes the Constitution. So you can do that. But had they have like said, you know what, we're going to pass a law saying no more slavery in the United States, that would have been unconstitutional because it's a state issue. But it became a federal issue when they ratified that amendment. Now the federal government can outlaw it because there's an amendment that says they can.
Mm.
So in a way, it was a bit of a federal government power grab.
In a way,
Not a bad one, but
not a bad one, but it was. Well, you got your good power grabs, you got your bad power grabs, you got your authorities that the federal government should have, you got your authorities they shouldn't have, you got things that they're doing. See, and here's the thing: when I talk about authorities and powers, they're different. I remember long ago, my mom asked me, "What's the difference between a power and authority?" An authority isn't a power that's granted. A power can also not be granted. They've taken that power, they exercise a power. They're not supposed to do it, but it's a power because they're doing it. But it's an authority only if you're allowed to do it. Does that make sense? So before the 13th Amendment, outlawing slavery was none of the federal government's business. They couldn't do it legally. But now we have, when we get to the 13th Amendment, we'll talk more about this. Now we have this amendment that says, hey, there's going to be no more slavery in the country, and it's up to the federal government to make sure it doesn't happen anymore. So it is a granting of power that belonged to the states before. And here's the thing about the founding fathers. You have to understand, at the time of the writing of the Constitution, all of the states were slave states still. But there were less slaves in the North than there were in the South. Slavery was slowly on its way out in the North. And anti-slavery legislation was starting to happen locally. Didn't happen at the state level until Pennsylvania. I believe it was 1792, 1793, somewhere along those lines. The only legislation that would be considered larger than something small and local happened in Vermont, like 4 years before the Constitution. But Vermont wasn't a state at the time. It was a region that was being disputed between New York and New Hampshire. They're both fighting over it, and Vermont's like, nah, we're our own people, so screw both of you. But and Vermont eventually did get its own way and became its own state, 14th state later. But that region had actually wrote and put forth anti-slavery legislation like 4 years before the Constitution. So the movement to get rid of slavery was on its move in the North. In the South, not so much. It was the way of life. It was necessary because they didn't have enough labor to keep up with the demand. Not that I'm, condoning anything. That was a large part of the reason. So it was labor needs. But, and so the founding fathers, watching this happen, they fully believed that slavery would eventually be abolished state by state from the North, working its way down until eventually the last state, Georgia, would eventually ban it as well on its own. That's what they suspected. They expected slavery to be gone within their lifetime. And so they weren't overly concerned. George Mason argued, as Christians, how can you not do something to stop this? You all know it's wrong. And most of them agreed. Remember, most of those people of that era hated slavery. Even the ones that had slaves were not fond of the practice. And they even blamed Britain or the laws on the books for keeping it going. And when the original Declaration of Independence was written, 138, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, there were 138 words of anti-slavery language in the original Declaration of Independence. 11 of the 13 states was good with it. Doesn't sound like a country that wanted to do whatever it could to keep slavery to me, as we're being told by like the 1619 Project. It was a country that wanted to get rid of slavery, but they wanted to do it the proper way. And they knew that you can't just throw these people who've been enslaved all their lives to the wolves. You can't just suddenly emancipate them. How are they going to take care of themselves? So the founders believed in what was called gradual emancipation. In fact, Jefferson said at one point that if you were to emancipate all of the slaves suddenly, it would create animosity between the races. They were firm believers in gradual emancipation. there was even a movement at the time to set up a colony in Africa so that they want to go back to Africa because they couldn't go back to their tribes now that they're fish out of water. That's no longer what they know. But you don't. But at the same time, there's going to be animosity here. If they want to go back to Africa, so a colony was established eventually called Liberia. Look it up, Liberia. They still to this day, I think, still use the dollar as the name of their currency. And this was to allow the slaves to go back to Africa, but have their own home because they can't go back to the tribes, but they don't want to be in this place where there's animosity. So anyway, so the idea was we're going to at least start the process with the Constitution by outlawing the Atlantic slave trade. It's a compromise because the southernmost states are like, wait a second, man, we need this stuff. Hey, we're giving you 20 years. But after 20 years, Congress can outlaw the Atlantic slave trade. That made sure that South Carolina, Georgia, and perhaps North Carolina was willing to sign the Constitution. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have signed it if they would just outlaw the Atlantic slave trade immediately. But they wanted to make sure they started the ball rolling, getting rid of slavery. And so this was put in there. Now, what wound up happening? In March of 1807, almost a year before that date where they could outlaw slavery, or slave trade, the slave trade, Atlantic slave trade, in March, the bill was proposed. The bill was signed by President Jefferson. And it was effective January 1st, 1808. So they were on top of it.
Well, I think it was you that was telling me that even Frederick Douglass said
he's
that
great.
He examined the Constitution and it was an anti-slavery document.
Right. Yeah. Frederick Douglass has two great constitutional quotes. The first quote I love is, "I did not like the Constitution until I read it." The second one was, "I have studied the Constitution. I have found it not to be a pro-slavery document." That's Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave. Yeah. Now, Frederick Douglass is one of my favorite historical figures, by the way. I absolutely adore Frederick Douglass. All right. So Article 1, Section 9, we've got the migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit, shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808. Now that makes sense, right? You with me? The migration part includes all migration. That also is what grants to the federal government the authority over immigration. So think about this for a second. Prior to the Constitution, the states had all of the authority regarding naturalization. Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress shall establish a uniform rule of naturalization. Then, as of January 1st, 1808, prior to that date, the states had all of the authorities regarding immigration, in other words, on how to do it and all that. Now, that said, the federal government did get involved in immigration before that. In 1790, the Immigration and Naturalization Act established the rules of immigration. So Congress is already acting upon immigration even before this went into effect. But Congress and the federal government has always had authority over immigration. But here's the thing. No, thank you. Colt Browning says that my background's looking better now. Well, it wasn't the last few weeks, but now that we've got it going, yeah, it looks good. Colt Browning just saying that my background's looking better than it did on Zoom. I like the fact that you can see all three of us. Well, two of us and an image. Anyway, getting back to what we're talking about. So immigration has always kind of been a federal thing. But what happens once the immigrant is inside the state? That's where it's a concurrent issue. Concurrent meaning more than one responsibility or authority. So it's sort of like, to help you understand when it comes to immigration, federal government can make the rules, they write the laws, and they keep people from crossing the border. And if they cross the border, they can send them back. But what happens once that immigrant is inside the state? Well, then the state has authority to take care of their state. So it's sort of like the way I like to explain it to help people understand. It's sort of like a school ground. And if a school grounds anywhere else in the United States is like they are here in Southern California, they're fenced up, barbed wire, and asphalt. No, I'm kidding. Not all of them are that way, just the ones that I went to. But anyway, no, you have the school ground, right? Principal and the teacher have what's called a concurrent authority when it comes to detention, right? They can both issue detentions, but it depends on the situation. If it's on the school ground, then you might get it from the principal. If it's, in class, then it'd be the teacher, right? The teacher controls what goes on inside her class. The principal's in charge of the entire school, but he doesn't necessarily get involved in the class unless the teacher asks him to come in to help. So let's say now there's a kid who's not supposed to be on the campus, jumps the fence, throws his jacket over the barbed wire to get over the barbed wire, gets into the school ground, lands on the asphalt. And I grew up in South LA, North Long Beach, all right? So be it. And now the principal's got his security to go get that kid, get him off campus. He's not supposed to be there. But the kid, before the security notices, dips into one of the classrooms. While it is still the principal's responsibility to get this kid off campus, now that the kid is inside one of the classrooms, the teacher also has authority. I need to get this kid out of my class. He's not supposed to be here. So she, detains the kid, calls the principal. Hey, I've got this kid that's in my class that's not supposed to be here or on campus. Principal's security shows up, grabs the kid, takes the kid off campus. The state can say, hey, I don't want that immigrant in my state. But it's not their job to kick him out of the country. That's the job of the federal government. And once they cross that line to get into the country, immediately the government, like the principal, is in play here. But once that person is inside a state, typically that's immediate, the state does have the concurrent authority to say, hey, I want this person out of my classroom or out of my state. Same thing. They have that authority. So immigration is an interesting one. It's got a concurrent thing going where the states and the federal government both have authorities, but the ultimate authority of removing that person from the country, that belongs to the federal government. Now, that said, I have a friend of mine who used to serve in the Border Patrol, and he would say that what some of the sheriffs would do, and the Border Patrol would look the other way. Say, hey, buddy, at least let me get you close there so you can do some of the administrative, push them through the exit. Whoops. Oh, hey, you're on the other side. Sorry. That would happen. But so be it. But nonetheless, technically, immigration is mentioned here. It's also mentioned in Article 1, Section 8, and it is a concurrent issue.
So you mentioned the border. You mentioned the borders, Doug, and I don't think I've ever told you this story, but nobody had ever really heard of the town I was born in until about the last 5 years with the immigration. Okay. Del Rio, Texas. That's that's basically where all the hundreds of thousands are coming across right now. Mm-hmm. That's the wide open spot. Yeah, that wasn't even a blip on anybody's map prior to this wide open border policy.
Yeah. But, well, you're so famous. I don't know if it was you or the immigration that put it on the map. Which was it?
That was the immigration.
Oh, okay. So immigration is more famous than you at this point?
Fame is the last thing I've ever wanted, Doug. You know that.
He's not famous. He's infamous.
Okay, that one I can. That's one I can live with.
That's one I can live with. Sue says Del Rio not good now.
No, not at all. But I don't look. I left when I was like a few months old. I have no idea what it was like back then. Dad was in the Air Force station there, but I don't think I've ever been back to visit.
I was born in Redondo Beach, California, with a surfboard under one arm and a Constitution under the other, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it. All right. Article 1, Section 9. Next part. Now we're getting into some very interesting stuff because the rest of Article 1, Section 9 are prohibitions to the federal government. In other words, the Constitution, the way it's laid out, is it gives authorities. So in order to have an authority, it must be expressly enumerated in the Constitution. This section is very unique because it's saying, oh, by the way, federal government, here's some stuff you can't do. We're going to tell you what you're not allowed to do in this section. So it's kind of fascinating. So let's go through them. So for those of you who have a pocket Constitution, it looks like that. One right there. Okay. It's the top of page 8. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. All right. So what does habeas corpus mean? In Latin, it means present the body. What it means is in a legal sense. Present the body in a legal sense. Once a person is detained, they're arrested, they're charged. You're not supposed to be thrown in jail. They close the door and they forget about you. No, the writ of habeas corpus says that your body must be presented to the court system. You must have your due process still available to you no matter what. The writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. You need to be presented to the courts.
So,
yeah, the January 6 people have no clue what I'm talking about.
No, I was going to say the Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, that's a question in the chat from Sue. We definitely
now he claimed Abraham Lincoln claimed that the latter part of this clause gave him his excuse. So let's continue to read. We'll get to that. So the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. That was his excuse. But here's the question now. First of all, were the Confederate States of America rebelling?
No.
Why?
Because they were seceding.
They seceded. They were no longer part of the whole.
They were seeking self-determination.
Exactly. So their rebellion wasn't against the whole because it wasn't a rebellion. They had left the whole. They were no longer under the contract. They were out of there. I'm not rebelling. I'm leaving.
They withdrew from the contract. Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't.
So now,
and as who is it? De Lorenzo says it was the war for Southern determination.
Yeah, well, all my family in Arkansas calls it the War of Northern Aggression.
Exactly.
Well, Colt Browning beat me to it, and he had already in there. I just now looked right after I said it. War of Northern Aggression somehow equals rebellion after the South left. Zero logic.
Mm-hmm.
Great comment. All right, so and I don't like calling it the Civil War either. Why? Because it wasn't a civil war.
Because it wasn't a civil war. A civil war is two factions fighting over control of the same entity.
Right.
That's not what was going on.
They were no longer in the entity. They had left. All right. So,
yeah.
Let me ask a stupid question because I know the answer, but I want to now. Colt's like, I'm on top of that stuff, Doug. You are. So let me ask this question. Oh, well, then it was the war over slavery, right? No. It wasn't a war about slavery. Well, yeah, it was. Lincoln, he freed the slaves. No, Lincoln didn't free the slaves. 13th Amendment did. The war was not about slavery. How do I know it wasn't about slavery? Well, without getting into the details that you guys will talk about, my favorite argument to show that the war was not about slavery originally, it became about slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation. But before that, it wasn't about slavery per se. And how do I know? Well, see, Virginia, huge state population still at that point,
was the biggest.
Had seceded, right?
Mm-hmm.
But 13 of the counties said, we disagree with secession. So they seceded from Virginia and then applied for statehood back to the Union and became the state of West Virginia. But West Virginia, here's the key here. West Virginia was readmitted, or was admitted, shouldn't say readmitted because it was a new state, was admitted to the Union as a slave state.
Mm-hmm. During the Civil War.
Not during the Civil War, during the war between the states. Stop.
Sorry. Semantics.
So we have a state during the war between the states that's supposed to be about slavery being readmitted to the Union as a slave state. Well, that's interesting. If the war is about slavery, why would they let a slave state back into the Union? Unless it really wasn't about slavery. Understand this. 4 other states that were in the Union were also slave states. Tennessee, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. They were still slave states. So you got now with West
Tennessee,
Virginia, 5
Tennessee,
slave states.
Tennessee was in the Confederacy.
No, it was a peripheral state. A state
No,
in the,
that you're thinking of Kentucky.
No, because Tennessee never actually seceded, did they?
Yeah, Tennessee seceded. Tennessee, so Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware were the border states.
I think Mr. Partain is correct on this one.
Okay. Well, Tennessee was the first to come back into the Union. That's what it was.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Doug, let me ask you this question. How do you answer it when people ask you, well, was the Revolutionary War a civil war? Was that not 2 entities fighting over one piece of land?
Well, yes and no. We weren't. We were colonies, though. It's a whole different dynamic. I mean, because we were not a part of the country. We were within the empire. So we weren't really a part of one whole. We were part of a greater whole, but we didn't want to be a part of that greater whole. We wanted to be separated from it. So it was a rebellion. It was a revolution. I don't know how to answer that other than what I just said.
well, no, because the same argument. The South didn't want to be part of a bigger whole. They wanted to be their own entity. It's the same thing.
Yeah, but they weren't colonies. They were a part. They were a part of that country.
Gotcha. That's the semantical difference, and it actually matters. It's legally, I think it does.
Are we going to talk about why? I mean, I'm just curious. Are we going to talk about the actual reason? One of the main reasons that the South seceded?
Not today. When we get to the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, we will.
Okay. Because I think
the only reason why this is even part of the conversation is because when it came to the writ of habeas corpus, that was something that Lincoln stomped all over, and so that comes into the discussion.
Well, I mean, I just want to say for the audience, because I know there's going to be some people who are going to want some answers to that, and they're not going to want to wait to the 13th Amendment.
No, so they're going to have to wait, and that's what's called a teaser.
No, I'm just saying. If you guys want to look for some information, you can go to Brian McClanahan's channel. You can also go to the Abbeville Institute. You can go to. There's several places, and I'll put some of those in the.
And we've talked about it here before, actually, too. If
we
want to go back to some of the older videos, but when I get back to 13th Amendment, we'll get into more detail.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and when it comes to Missouri, that's right. Missouri never actually seceded, but it was like the state was really split.
Well,
there was a civil war going on within Missouri.
Yes,
and the Civil War is the appropriate term on that case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, little outlaw Josie Wales reference.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, then you had Kansas as well. So.
Kansas, bloody Kansas.
Bloody Kansas. That was where Dodge City and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was all of what wound up really leading to a lot of what became the war between the states. Kansas was kind of the early grounds. It was killing fields, as they sometimes call it too. All right, so let's continue. So we got the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. Next one, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. What's a bill of attainder? Well, let's break down the language. If it is a bill, it is a legislative instrument. It's a legislative thing. Attainder, what does attainder mean? If an attainder, that means you have been detained, you've been charged, you've gone through due process, and you can be punished. That's all a part of attainder. So, bill, legislative. Attainder, judicial. So what a bill of attainder is, it says no bill of attainder is allowed. In other words, no legislation that acts like a judicial instrument or judicially. In other words, the legislature cannot act like judges. They cannot convict you, try you, and criminally punish you. There's, of course, one exception, sort of, impeachment, but that's a political trial, and that's within. But aside from that, Congress has no judicial authorities whatsoever. So they're not allowed to pass a bill that acts in a judicial manner.
Let's hope
So
they
in other
remember
words,
that.
it prescribes what your punishment's going to be, and then you will be punished if you violate it without due process because the bill says so. That's a bill of attainder. Oh, suddenly there's a few laws and bills lately that come to mind, huh? All right, so no bill of attainder, or, now remember, this is to the federal government. When we get to Article 1, Section 10, we'll get into the states. This also is something the states can't do, but that's a different discussion. Or ex post facto law. Ex post facto. What does ex post facto mean, Warhamster?
After the fact.
After the fact. Simple Latin. You all know Latin, right? Well, then how did you get into college if you don't know Latin? Oh, that's right. It isn't 1776 anymore. But anyway, yeah, back then, you had to know Latin just to get admitted into Yale or Harvard or any of those colleges. That's crazy. Latin and Greek. But anyway, so ex post facto, after the fact, no law after the fact. In other words,
you can't make it retroactive?
Can't make it retroactive. This is no longer legal, so since you have one, you can't have it. No, you bought it legally. They can't make illegal what you bought legally. Does something come to mind? I don't know. Magazines, firearms, yeah. They are violating this one right and left, mostly left. So no ex post facto law, no after the fact law. Everything that's already been acquired legally is grandfathered, in other words, for those of you who want to use a more modern language here. And thank you for using my language. I love it when people start talking the way I do. Sue says we need to let those Congress critters know about this. All right, Congress critters. That's one of my favorite terms. Thanks for adopting it. Of course, if Sue was already using it, that means we came to the same conclusion.
I've been using that one for decades.
Really? So have I.
Yeah, that's
we
that's
didn't
the only
know
reason
each
we got
other.
along with. Yeah, when we met, that's the only reason I liked you. You used the term.
It's the only reason I like. He walked up, smelled me, kind of looked at me. I don't like this guy. Oh, Congress critters. All right, fine. We'll let you in.
It's about how it went. It's about right.
No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid. What's capitation? All right, well, let's break that down. As Sue says, same conclusion. What's capitation? Okay, what's decapitation? It's when you lose your head, right? So capitation must have something to do with the head. No capitation or other direct tax. In other words, no head tax, no per person tax. That's what that means.
Capitation is defined in the 1828 dictionary, a numeration by the head, a numbering of persons, a tax or imposition upon each head of person, a poll tax, sometimes written capitation tax.
Yeah, that's a direct tax on individuals. That's basically what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid, unless in proportion to the census or enumeration hereon before directed to be taken. Well, if it's based on the enumeration, you can't do it to the individuals. You're going to do it to the individual that's a part of the proportion. Okay, well, that proportion would be your state group. So in other words, the direct tax was laid on the state. The state paid it based on its population. Right now, California is 11.9% of the total population of the United States. Based on the questions that were asked in the census, yes, that probably includes illegal aliens too. So 11.9%. So if it was still based on the old rules, California would pay 11.9% of the federal budget. Because the taxation wasn't supposed to be against the people. 16th Amendment changed that. When we get 16th Amendment, we'll go into that. I don't want to go into it right now just yet. I know I leave you guys hanging on a lot of stuff. Just hang in there. Be patient. So what it's saying here is no direct tax. Only the way they're doing it is allowed.
And the way they did it was with tariffs.
Not just tariffs, but also they would they would actually present their budget and tax the states, not just tariffs. Tariffs were a minor part of the budget. What they would do is send out their budget, and the states then would pay their fair share, their percentage, their share, and sometimes the state would say, "Wait, wait a second.
No, but what
This
about
is unconstitutional. I'm not paying for it. Redo your budget, and we can talk."
what about the protectionary tariffs that the South was so pissed off about? That was one of them. That was a huge issue in the cause of the War of Northern Aggression.
Absolutely, but those tariffs were regarding other countries. It was regarding trade with other countries. It wasn't between the states.
But yeah, but the states had to pay for it.
Right.
The southern
In the beginning,
states,
they didn't.
the southern states were the ones that had to pay for that.
Right.
That
In the beginning, they didn't. That was
Right.
something was added later.
Doug,
That had
give the
nothing to do with 1787 writing of this document, though.
Yeah, Doug, can you give the historical context of how this is different than, and part of the reason we even had a need for a constitution is because prior to that, the states were taxing each other.
Oh, absolutely, because of their own independent countries.
Yeah, and it became ruinous. They were
absolutely.
Like New Jersey was getting taxed 30% by New York.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had protectionist laws. They wanted to protect their manufacturing. They're doing all kinds of things they could to protect themselves against each other. Why do you think they had militias? So they could use it against each other.
Doug, if you look in the chat, you see Colt Browning has a question.
We'll go to the one above it. He said, "Yeah, what about Congress issuing subpoenas?" I answered it right below, but I want to make sure I'm correct. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out.
I haven't seen the answer yet on mine.
They can have investigations.
Oh, there it is.
Material to legislating.
I see that.
So I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Congressional subpoenas are for the purpose of gathering information, but they cannot act in a judicial manner of convicting or things like that.
But they're for
not supposed to anyway.
So the subpoena is legal, though.
Yeah, subpoena is legal, but it's an information gathering tactic, is all it is. Or at least that's all it's supposed to be.
Okay, so
I mean, when we talk about these people, remember the difference between authority and power? Yeah, they've got the power to do pretty much anything they want. That doesn't mean it's authorized. That doesn't mean they're supposed to. Doesn't mean they legally can. There's a lot of things they do because they do it because, well, they're tyrants. That's what they do. It's like the story about the scorpion and the frog. Why did you sting me? Because I'm a scorpion. It's what I do. All right, that's what they do. But that said, if it's for legislative purposes, if it's for information gathering, congressional subpoenas are perfectly fine. But they're not supposed to act in a manner legislatively. They're not supposed to then take that information, hold a hearing, charge you, convict you, and punish you without you ever getting your day in court. That makes sense. All right. And Colt, exactly. Usurpers usurp, criminals commit crime, liars lie, deceivers deceive, tyrants are tyrants. That's what they do. Okay, let's continue. Well, I like today's crowd. You know, they're not getting off onto any weird directions like they.
Let me ask you a question here, because Colt revealed his age last week, and I don't know if you saw it. Do you know how old Colt is?
He's a youngster, if I remember. Yeah,
he's a youngster. I'm very impressed with him.
What was it? 14, 15, something like that?
No, he's a little older than that.
A little bit older than that?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the 29-year-old or 20 whatever year old.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Because there was one that was like 14 or something like that.
Yes.
Also, I can't remember who it was. Yeah. But Colt. Let me chase a rabbit down a trail real quick. Don't worry, I'll shoot it. Get back on the main path in a second. 28. Thank you, Colt. People like Colt in this chat room are very important because, and I talked about this, matter of fact, in my class this morning in Fallbrook, because we had a woman in there who I'm going to guess late 20s, early 30s. Hopefully she's not listening, because that way, if I'm wrong, I won't get yelled at. But, and I was jazzed to have this young lady in there. And I told her, and I told the whole crowd, eventually us older folks, we're going to get tired. We're going to pass away. And we're going to have to hand the oars over to the next generation. What I mean by oars is the way I like to help people understand what we're going through. It's like that yellow raft going down the Niagara River, and the Niagara River's got its rapids and everything else. And there's a sign that says the point of no return. You go past that, it doesn't matter how good of a rower you are, how good of a motor you have. You're going over the falls, the Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening is with the roar of the falls and the roar of everything, we're not even sure what's going on. All we know, we got to row away from the falls. And eventually what happens, every once in a while, and this happened twice in my life, we've gotten far enough away from the falls so we couldn't hear the falls anymore. And we threw up our hands, hooray! And we drop our oars. And under that boat, there's a current that never sleeps, is persistent, consistent, and relentless. And its job is to push us over the falls. And it never stops. We better start rowing again. We better keep rowing, and we got to row faster than that current. The problem is, as we get older, the younger generation, the Colts of the world and younger, don't know they're supposed to row, much less why. We better teach them, or that raft is going over the falls, and it's a sudden destruction.
Well, that's the express point of this class.
And that is the whole point of this class, because how can you got a broken down car in the driveway? How can you fix it if you've never read the owner's manual? How do you know which wrenches to turn if you've not learned to become at least sort of a mechanic? I want to make you guys constitutional mechanics, but you got to read the owner's manual. You got to understand the owner's manual if we're going to do it. That's the point. That's the whole point. And this is my way of occupying until his return, as it says in the Bible when it comes to Christianity. My ministry is to do what I can to make everybody constitutional mechanics the best I can.
Yeah. And there's no AAA to call.
There's no AAA to call. That's pretty good. All right, so we've got no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. We'll return to this when we get to the 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment is very careful in this language to make sure it doesn't follow this. So now here's my question for those of you who have the pocket constitution. If the 16th Amendment then pretty much overturns this, how come it's not in brackets? It's a good question. All right. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. In other words, getting back to what Warhamster was talking about earlier, where there were tariffs against the states, by the states, between the states. Not only can the states not do that to each other, neither can the federal government do that. If it's an export just from the state, no tariffs, no federal tariffs, no state tariffs, no taxes, no duties. Because we're a country now, guys. All you states have been arguing, we're a country. Let's get along. Let's let the commerce flow between us easily and effortlessly. We're a country now. Stop the bickering. That's essentially what it's saying. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that they can't charge some type of duty or tax for exporting out of the country. That's a whole different discussion. No preference shall be given to any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. Same situation. We're now a country. You're not going to say, hey, this is a New Jersey ship and we're going to nail them in New York Harbor. No, we're all a country. You can't do that to each other, and the federal government can't do that to the states. We're a country now. So there's not going to be any preference. There's not going to be any extra this or extra that. Nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. Hey, I'm here from New Jersey into the New York Harbor. Oh, you got an extra tax to pay. Nope, not allowed. By the state or by the federal government. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. In other words, first it has to be in a bill originated in the House of Representatives. Then it has to be approved by both houses, signed by the president. Then the money can be pulled out of the treasury based on what it says in that law. Not supposed to pull money out for any other reason, for in any other way. Think they're following that, Ron? Not really. Here's what they do too: is what they'll do is they'll create a bill to pull out some money for something, but they'll make it a slush fund. Well, this is for military purposes. It's a big giant general thing, and it never gets spent, so it just kind of sits there. And then they'll say something like, "Hey, you know, funding that hospital, it's good for the safety, the national security. So that's a military thing. Let's grab some money for it." They create all these slush funds, and they do that garbage with it. How about toll roads? That's a state issue. There shouldn't be a federal toll road. I can't remember if the federal government is playing around with toll roads or not. I'm pretty sure it's all state. Toll roads are all state, I'm pretty sure. But good question, Sue.
The whistleblower from Project Veritas this week was talking about how the FDA or the CDC, I think it was either the CDC or FDA, takes in like $4.5 billion a year from the big pharmaceutical companies, and they got all this money piled up. They got to get creative to figure out ways to spend it. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
The states decided to join the union, their choice. So, yep, better to get along. Well, I wouldn't call war a choice, actually. I'm talking pre-Civil War. I mean, War of Northern Aggression. All right, let me answer that real quick. You really think the wars before the war between the states was choices? They were choices? You really think that?
War of 1812 sure wasn't. That was forced on us by Mr. Rothschilds.
Yep.
For having the audacity to cancel the first Bank of the United States. Or, to not renew.
And what? And ratify the original 13th Amendment. I think you've been onto something on there. I fully believe that is a part of the reason too.
Yeah, but that's next paragraph. We're going to get to that this week, or is that?
We won't get to that.
And FYI, for those of you who are not aware, the original 13th Amendment is not the existing 13th Amendment.
In fact, the existing 13th Amendment is actually the third 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
The second one was proposed and did not pass.
Right, didn't get ratified. That one would have made slavery permanent.
Yeah. I'm not aware of that one. But I'm not aware of that one. That's new to me.
The Untold History Channel's not aware of a piece of history.
What?
You haven't been told. It's untold.
I did not know this.
Well, now it's told.
Wow. Research.
That's a good story. I'll come armed with some facts.
All right, so next week. So no money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. In other words, transparency. They're supposed to give you a journal saying, "Hey, look, this is how we've been spending your money." Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I don't even think I have to say anything else after that. All right, the last one I'm going to read, we're going to go over a little bit, but yeah, we're going to deep dive into it next week for sure. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. When Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we are all created equal, that was a part of what he meant. There's no nobility. There's no noble class. There's no privileged class, or at least in America. Boy, we screwed that one up, haven't we? No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them, the states, shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So in other words, if you're holding office, you're not supposed to have anything to do with making deals with the international princes and powers and getting gifts and holding a title, whatever, as an office holder. Could you imagine, just for a moment, just for kicks and giggles, if they were to pass an amendment that actually applied that to citizens too? Why, that'd be crazy, wouldn't it? That would make the international bar illegal. Oh, wait a second. They did. That's what we're going to talk about next week. the missing 13th Amendment. We'll open the show with the missing 13th Amendment. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Any comments, questions, concerns from you two gentlemen or the chat room while I'm marking my pocket Constitution?
Well, Colt's asking about the War of 1812, but I just typed in that he's going to have to wait for next week. And I love telling the story of my theory of the War of 1812. So we will definitely get to that.
Missing. I'm even writing myself a little note. Start with missing 13th Amendment. Oh, man. Here's the thing about the missing 13th Amendment. Yes, BAR, British Accreditation Registry. Exactly. Here's the thing about the missing 13th Amendment. We didn't even know about it until 1983.
Well, that ties into one of our other theories, is who had incentive to disappear it right after the Civil War. I'm sorry, the war between states. God, it's hard to get that right every single
well, because
time.
we've been drilled with the wrong information so long, we automatically say it.
Yeah, it's like last night. It's like last night I was chastising Ron for going back to the right versus left. It's like I get so mad when people call our political opponents liberals. I go, no, I believe in free speech. I believe in due process and things. I'm the liberal. They don't get to steal my word anymore. I want it back.
Yeah, it's just like when people say, well, Doug, what'd you think of the Federalists? Well, do you mean the people who love the Constitution or the members of the Federalist Party? Because they're opponents of each other, but they go by the same word. Because, see, that's what the enemies of the Constitution do. They hijack words and they take them for themselves, even though it means something totally different. It's, my friend Joe Scarafone would say, well, they call it word magic. That's exactly what they call it.
It's exactly what it is.
They use the language against us. They take words, they get them to mean other things, and they also change the definitions, or at least the frequency of what the definition should be.
What is the word that is used to identify the organization of letters to form a word? What do they call that?
Well, if you acronym is where it's the first letter of a bunch of words put together.
No.
That's not what you're asking. I'm trying to remember what the other one's called.
It's called spell.
What?
You spell a word. It's the organization of letters to form a word. Is a spell.
Oh, I thought you were getting into like.
I can't. I have to ask it in such a way that I'm not going to tell you the answer. So, but a spell is a formation of letters to form a word, right?
Right. Okay.
But word magic. A spell.
A spell's how I turned it. A spell's how I got turned into a hamster. Oh, come on, that was funny, guys.
Well, Doug is like, he's contemplating what I said. He's like, he didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good. Yours was, not his. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with his, I wish I had a sound effect of crickets.
Yeah, I couldn't say what's the word to spell, right? I had to.
Yeah, no, I see what you.
I had to come at it in a different way.
In hindsight, see, I'm like I'm right now. I'm like that kid that doesn't get the joke, and you got to explain the joke, and it's not really as funny. Yeah, that's what just happened.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Colt. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Kikio, that's the youngster.
Yeah, he popped in late.
Looks like we got.
Tell me what we are talking about.
Looks like we got 22. We got 22% new this week.
All right, very good.
That's good.
Tell your friends. Tell everybody. Let's grow this even more, not because of any reason other than I want to get this to as many people as I can. Now, that said, if you're interested in learning more about me, DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. If you want to help out with donations, you can go to either one of those sites, DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. Want to buy books, DouglasVGibbs.com/store. I've got 2 orders to fill tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact. Now, we don't have time today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. But you don't want to deal with Amazon, but you want to buy my books, get them from me directly. DouglasVGibbs.com/store. 2 good news there. Number 1, you won't be dealing with Amazon. And number 2, it's autographed. And so that's a 2. That's not peace, but peace out. We'll see you guys later.
So that's it. We're done.
Yeah, we're
Call it
done.
a day. All right. Are you going to San
Hey,
Juan
Bob
tonight?
and Valerie Russo. Oh, wait. Whoa. With chat room. Bob and Valerie Russo used to come to my class in Temecula. They now live in Nevada. Bob, oh my goodness. Great to see you guys in the chat. So, very good. I had to, the moment I saw those names, I had to say hello. These Bob and Valerie. Last time I saw Bob, he was taking me out to lunch, and I was talking about how my radio show was short some funds. Someone overheard a conversation, laid the money on the table, and walked away. And I funded my radio show that way. You talk about God in action. Bob was there to witness it. All right.
All right. Well, on that note, guys.
Yeah, so good to see you guys. We'll see you next week. Always
yes,
enjoy.
we'll
I got to get out to San Juan Capistrano, so I need to leave in the next 5 minutes or I'll be late.
Yeah,
and always appreciate. Hey, look, everything worked today. Woo! All right.
All right, guys. On that note, we will say thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. Take care.
See y'all next week.
All right.